other announcements, job offerings, events coming up? Well, if not, let's move on to today's presentation, which is about the innovative Zero Emission Delivery Zone pilot project. It's a collaboration between Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator and the city of Santa Monica. And telling us about it will be Mike Noe. Mike is pilots manager with the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and he's coordinating the project here. And after his presentation, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Also joining the discussion with Mike will be Royce Wang from Urb-e, or he's their regional operations manager. So Mike, if you'd like to take it from here, and we'll enable screen sharing for your presentation. We can get on with the highlight of our event.
Fantastic, and thank you, Kent and Lorian, for having Royce and I here. Couldn't have said it better. This is absolutely a long-term project that LACI and the city of Santa Monica have partnered together to bring a variety of people together in order to test, validate, and enable zero emission delivery. And so the Zero Emission Delivery Zone was born. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I have a handful of slides and we'll walk through those. And definitely Royce is going to be here from Urb-e, and we'll be able to explain their role in the Zero Emission Delivery Zone. I'd ask that just throughout the presentation, if you have questions, we can make this super informal. Kent, is it normal just to have people ask questions throughout the briefings, or is it better just to wait to the very end for Q&A?
You know, I think logistically it works better to have them at the end so it doesn't interrupt your flow, unless it's just a clarification. But we're going to ask people to put the questions in the chat, if you would please, and that way we can take them in order that we get them. Does that work?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, bringing up my slide deck. And just give me, I'll admit I am not a Zoom guy. I'm more of a Google Meet. So I will do my best to give you guys a steady presentation. But just if anything seems out of place or you're not seeing something, please let me know, folks. Happy to pause and interact. Everyone should be seeing the LACI logo on the front, and it should say Santa Monica Zero Emission Delivery Zone ZEDS, progress and learnings to date. So with no further ado, this is designed really just to give you guys a entry-level understanding of what the ZEDS was and how it came to be. The Zero Emission Delivery Zone was born out of LACI's TEP, which is the Transportation Electrification Partnership. It's a collection of cities, of companies, a handful of them just off the top of my head. Santa Monica is one, Culver City, Inglewood are some of the cities, BMW, Audi, Nissan are some of the major companies. It's a public-private partnership, and the goal is just trying to encourage that EV adoption. And in particular, this effort was desired to focus on goods delivery. So companies that are in the delivery business, we were trying to encourage them to increase their adoption of electric vehicles. So the pilot was proposed, and this would be the first of its kind in the United States, basically to jumpstart the TEP's goals of EV adoption by the 2028 to coincide with the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. My style is not to speak to every part of the slide, but I will speak to the highlights in blue. Please read along with me, or if you guys have questions or comments, just throw them in the chat and we'll try to address them all at the end unless there's something urgent. So big picture, the goal, the top line goal of the Zero Emission Delivery Zone is to create a blueprint for the cities, enabling them to lower their barriers for entry, determine which regulations are challenging companies' abilities and communities' abilities to increase zero emission delivery within their cities, and really just be a guide for other municipalities to emulate. So all of the benefits are designed to aid the community, but really we're targeting, the focus of this pilot is to try and get cities to increase their willingness to adopt zero emission delivery. So Santa Monica was one of 3 cities that submitted proposals. And my understanding, this decision to select Santa Monica happened before my time at LACI. But the big picture, I'm told, is that Santa Monica was prepared, and coming out of or right in the middle of the pandemic is when the zero emission delivery zone kicked off in February of 2021. And Santa Monica was informed and shaped, I would say, more than other cities by the arrival of the e-scooters. There was not a solid ordinance at the time when the e-scooters first arrived in Santa Monica, and because of that, I think the city felt ill prepared, and this was echoed in their desire to be forward thinking with the zero emission delivery zone and their desire to get ahead of the curve. So they proposed a 1 square mile area within the commercial activity core, and really what you need to know there is that you have roughly 16,000 residents and nearly 30,000 workers within that 1 square mile. And that includes the downtown Santa Monica, with the 3rd Street Promenade being probably the largest section. So here were some of the goals of the ZEDs. And as I said, it's bringing together the communities, cities, technology partners, and delivery companies. Really, my lead priority is trying to figure out the best ways, the best practices and the best ways to scale the zero emission delivery zone in Santa Monica and to replicate it in other cities. And that's to focus on the learnings in policy, what technologies are successful, and the business models that are going to, not only thrive, but be successful in multiple different cities. It's not designed just to be successful in Santa Monica. It's designed to be successful, across the greater Southern California area and beyond. And I'll talk to some of the efforts LACI's leading to try and make that happen. And then, in addition to that scalability and replicability, we want to ensure that the delivery partners are learning and are gaining some experience. They don't have to transition their entire fleet to an EV. They can pilot and or test 1 to 2, sometimes more vehicles in that EV zero emission delivery zone to try and determine what are the challenges, what are the things that are going to be difficult in making the switch to EVs. And I'll say there's some common sense understandings, and then there's some not so obvious learnings. It's not a 1-for-1. You can't just take whatever you would have shipped on a internal combustion engine vehicle and put it on an EV because there's weight restrictions, just the way the vehicles are designed and operate. And then there's factors at play that I didn't consider, when you're doing these deliveries in, say, New York City in the middle of winter, using the driver's heat inside the cabin to keep the driver warm, that takes away from your range, because that's another factor pulling on the battery that will reduce your range. And so, some of our partners have had to make some very significant changes in the way they deliver. One significant one I would say up front is normally when the delivery companies are figuring out what's going into a truck, they will what's called cube out the vehicle. They will fill it to the maximum capacity for volume. But one of our partners, IKEA, if you're familiar with their packages, they're all flat boxes and they tend to be relatively dense and heavy. They quickly figured out that they exceed the weight capacity for the vehicle before they exceed the volume capacity. So that's been something that they've had to adapt and learn through, practical experience. So there's a lot of learning going on in the zero emission delivery zone. And I just wanted to touch on some of the data that we're collecting throughout the ZEDs is along the right-hand column. We're working with our delivery partners to collect vehicle miles traveled, number of average deliveries per month, and then just an idea of what their costs are for charging and maintenance of these vehicles. So those are immediate data points that we're collecting and trying to gain an understanding, doing some trend analysis, looking for patterns, figuring out where, where the pain points exist. And that's the quantitative piece. The qualitative piece, we've conducted several surveys with some of the EV drivers, and we're continuing to generate more surveys that are going to go to the business partners that are aligned with the delivery providers. So we're trying to gain a holistic approach to understanding what the ZEDS provides. So on your left there, you'll see there's a list or a collection of logos for all the different partners that were part of the ZEDS at one time or another. And along the right-hand side, you have the 4 different focus areas of the Zero Emission Delivery Zone that have been underway, from the beginning, but not all of them got off the ground at the same time. I will say this, the one in the upper left, the micromobility for last mile delivery, that one has been particularly challenging, and we've had a handful of partners that we thought we were going to generate some data from originally that just, it never got from here to there. But fortunately, we've had Urb-e, who's going to talk to what they're doing in the Zero Emission Delivery Zone. They're our latest partner to join the Zero Emission Delivery Zone, and the success they're having with making last mile delivery via zero emissions. So there's a lot of different aspects of the ZEDS. It had a very broad approach in how to address zero emission. So we tried to capture it through those 4 different focus areas. And this isn't a final collection of observations and lessons learned, but these are some of the significant ones that came up, at a midpoint and continue to inform us up to this point. So probably not terribly surprising to anybody that's done an experiment of such magnitude, but data collection and aggregation is difficult for many different organizations. Some it's part of their business model and how they operate and manage their business. Others, it's a secondary thought, and it's difficult to try and convince them that this type of data is useful. And not only that, and I was remiss in not saying this at the very beginning, the Zero Emission Delivery Zone is comprised of voluntary partners. There is no forcing function to operate in the Zero Emission Delivery Zone. It was entirely designed as a voluntary premise. And while I think that was definitely a benefit when announcing the ZEDS, that's also been part of the challenge, as well as having holding organizations and partners accountable to follow through on their agreements at the beginning, so that we can continue to come out with lessons learned at the end. Another significant factor with the ZEDS that's been a lesson learned is that spreading the word has been important, and we, LACI and others, have definitely done our best to amplify and echo, to put out reports on when things that are going on within the ZEDS. However, it's challenging to find the right people that are interested in that message and also have a way to execute, or take action with that knowledge. The ZEDS was originally designed for goods delivery, as I said, but then trying to engage the public beyond. We've obviously had partners like Chasm that have been fantastic and helpful throughout the ZEDS. But trying to figure out the right way to mobilize the public and get them involved in the Zero Emission Delivery Zone, and how to capture their imagination, really, and figure out how best it would benefit the public has been an ongoing challenge. But I would say all that, and I want to but on this last slide, I want to emphasize this last quote, and it's from one of our significant partners, IKEA, within the Zero Emission Delivery Zone. And I'll just read this quote. EV home delivery is not only possible, but represents the low-hanging fruit for EV adoption. The obstacles are largely around vehicle ownership. Most commercial vehicles are owned by microfleets. And I paraphrase this last part, but basically delivery businesses must enable drivers to go EV by providing charging infrastructure that is convenient and easy for EV drivers to use. So what does that mean? something, not being a delivery professional prior to my work with LACI, I did not realize that a lot of the delivery organizations like FedEx, like I think UPS is the exception, but FedEx, DHL, OnTrack, a lot of those, they do not own their own vehicles. They subcontract through third parties to provide their trucks. And so the trucks are not always able to charge at the yards. There's not infrastructure created at these organizations so that the trucks that are owned by third party can be charged and ready to deliver on the morning of, when they're showing up to pick up their loads and then go out on their runs. So IKEA recognized that, and IKEA is no different. They have a third party that they use to create their delivery, or that manages their delivery of their products. But what they did control is at their Burbank store, and also at their West Covina store, they've installed level 2 chargers that I believe at the Burbank one, they have 10 charger stations. And that's a cost that they invested in and decided that upfront, this was what they were going to do to enable EV delivery. So now the trucks can be stored, charged overnight, and prepared for the drivers to show up the morning of and just jump in and ensure that their packages are loaded up for the day and then go and do their deliveries. But that is something that I think IKEA is leading by example, but that's not replicated at other locations. And so that's a thing that we need to encourage and try to persuade other delivery companies to invest in. So as we're getting ready, the final report for the LACI ZEDs is expected to come out near the end of this year. The pilot itself will wrap up in December, but we're likely to stop collecting data around October or early fall, just so that we can prepare for Santa Monica's council outbrief, where they're going to be presenting 4 different changes to laws and regulations. And so yeah, that's part of our process here, and that's one of the things we're partnering with Santa Monica to ensure that they're putting their best foot forward when they approach the council and present the findings. But along those lines, one of the other aspects of the ZEDs that's ongoing is the EV prioritized loading zones, and that's with the automotive cameras. And there's 12 different cameras throughout the Zero Emission Delivery Zone that are monitoring these spaces for prioritized EV loading. One of the challenges with partnering with the city is that a decision was made early on to not enforce the violation of these parking spots. So bottom line is the camera footage has generated a lot of instances where internal combustion vehicles are parked. And without violation or without enforcement, that's one of the observations. That's not to say there's not meaningful data there, but it's just one of the challenges is the city is not, city governments are not poised and particularly flexible in changing regulations of that nature. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to be mindful of in future efforts, and trying to encourage other ways to experiment and determine best ways forward. The other piece, and I'll introduce my partner here in this presentation, Royce Wang, who, as I said earlier, recently joined the Zero Emission Delivery Zone. Their organization, Urb-e, in partnership with Axle Hire and Circuit, have been working to set up these micro delivery hubs. And essentially, these are locations where goods are being removed from larger vehicles, not always, oftentimes internal combustion engine vehicles, but this is where they're going to be loaded onto smaller zero emission vehicles to make that last mile delivery a zero emission delivery outcome. So that's something that we're looking forward to, the data that's going to come from that, and definitely gain a better understanding of how last mile delivery is important for overall reduction in greenhouse gases. Here's just a quick touch on some of the different data we're gathering, and I already mentioned it previously, but the bottom line there with the data from Circuit, who is another major delivery partner, they're conducting on average per month 700. This is data from last quarter, from the first quarter of this year. 733 deliveries with a quarter mile between each delivery. And so what that really tells you there is that, there's a dense delivery footprint within the Zeds. And so 733 deliveries per month with a quarter mile between deliveries is, I think that's absolutely something we should be continuing to observe and monitor and look for when we're talking to other technology partners who are considering establishing either a Zeds or something similar. That's one of the factors that should be first and foremost is how many deliveries are going into that area already, and are you able to aggregate enough deliveries to make it worthwhile for the companies to, move their infrastructure into that part of the country. And then another tidbit here is just, again, from the first quarter, Coco, who's depicted in the picture there. I'm sure you guys have seen the robots running around conducting food deliveries, but they average about 1.36 miles per delivery. So that tells you that they're absolutely, exceeding. I think there was an unspoken understanding that perhaps Coco was not, delivering very far, and it was not, truly getting after, reducing greenhouse gases. Their business model is, why use a 2,000 pound plus greenhouse gas emitting vehicle to deliver a 2-pound burrito when you could have it delivered by a zero emission emitting vehicle that weighs less than 100 pounds. And the thought originally, I think the feedback was, well, you're not really able to go that far and deliver items that are, somebody couldn't just walk and pick up themselves. But with their average delivery of over 1.36 miles, I think we've cleared up that misperception. And so I'm starting to wrap up, but big picture, here are the 4 things that the city of Santa Monica is teeing up for their October city council meeting. Number 1 would be an ordinance to address, right now there's a policy in place that only robot delivery vehicles that are a part of the Zero Emission Delivery Zone, and that's Coco is the main one. There's 2 others, but they have not been able to execute their business model. Without being part of the Zeds, you cannot operate. So when the Zeds ends in December of this year, that ordinance will go into effect, presuming to enable other robot delivery companies to enter the market. In addition, they're planning to renew their agreement with Automotus, which is to focus on those zero emission prioritized EV loading zones. And then there was a plan to enable some level of enforcement and then define what the fines will be for violators that park in the EV prioritized loading zone. So that's what LACI's aiming to support the city of Santa Monica with in advance of that October council meeting. So this is my last slide, and before I kind of wanted to share a video from Urb-e just to lay the foundation for what Royce and his team are doing, and how excited we are to have them join the Zeds at this juncture. Is that all right, Royce? Do you mind if I throw that video on right now, or did you want to say a few words beforehand just to lay the ground? All right, I'm going to go ahead and throw the video in then. Let's see, pause, and let's see if I can, actually, I think the best way is stop. And forgive me, I wasn't able to see all your chats while you guys were listening, but I'm going to throw this video on, and then we'll address what I'm presuming are a bunch of questions. And get, so are you able to see the video? Okay. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Happy to open it up to questions. And Kent, if you want to just facilitate, or if you just want us to go through the chat, Royce and I.
Well, yeah, I think I'd like to give Royce a chance if he wants to say a little about what we just saw.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, Mike, for showing that video. I'm sure everyone has some questions and hopefully super excited by what that short 2-minute video showed. But in the first part of the video, you can see those containers are the standard size containers that we use to package all of our equipment, or all of the packages that we are delivering via our last mile delivery system. And that's one of the key tenets of our platform, which is containerization. So the thought came from our co-founders, where they were employing this, using large 53-foot containers to get across the transatlantic, trade. And so they thought, like, why not take that into consideration for a zero emission delivery system and make that part of it. So that's one of the key tenets, just containerizing everything at one location. So it's an easy process of switching out the containers and getting moving along with your day. Obviously, these containers don't fit as much as a UPS truck, but the 4 of these standard size containers actually do completely replace a full UPS truck with packages. So what we've launched this in New York City, and I think through several months of testing and deliveries, they showed that they had a 40% efficiency over standard UPS trucks. And that's a myriad of different factors. One of them is the bicycles are easier to maneuver through streets. There's less traffic congestion, easy to make U-turns, fits in bike lanes. And then the fun fact that it also is zero emission. Then when a rider is done with their one container, which usually takes about an hour to 2 hours, they'll head back to the micro delivery hubs, switch out the containers, which takes about a minute, and then they're on their way again. And so a standard day for a rider would be about 7 to 8 hours, and they would do about 4 of these containers, which is the same as a UPS truck. But I think UPS trucks, the last I heard, typical UPS trucks, they do their days like greater than 8 hours, up to 12 hours sometimes. They cause a lot of traffic, a lot of congestion on the streets, and obviously a lot of emissions from those trucks. So we launched Santa Monica, the depot there, in 3 weeks ago. We started off with about 50 packages delivered per day. And yesterday we hit our highest day with 150 packages delivered, with 3 riders all riding for a little over 7 hours each. And I think the estimated CO2 savings was about like 75 pounds. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and also these all these equipments are completely designed to be modular. As we onboard new clients and customers, we are able to do different modifications to the bike or the trailer system or the containers to accommodate whatever the customer would like to deliver for their last mile delivery. Currently, we do have 3 different types of containers, that standard size that you guys saw in the video. We also have an XL box, which is about 50% taller and accommodates much larger boxes, like Axle Hire has. And Axle Hire is our only customer currently in the Zeds, but we are about to onboard another client. But they won't be using us as a DSP, which Axle Hire is using us for. But our actual another vertical for our business is equipment leasing. So we call it fully managed fleet leasing program. Essentially, a customer would come every day in the morning to pick up 1 or 2 or however many equipments they need for their business. They would use it however they need. They would be able to slap their own logos and things on the containers. And then at the end of the day, they bring it back. We do all the safety checks, all the maintenance, everything to get it ready, and all the battery charging and everything, so that the next morning they're ready to go again.
Okay, thank you, Royce. I see we got a bunch of questions piling up in the chat there, and I think maybe we ought to get to those right away. Mike, if you could just reference the chat and start with the top question. I don't know if you've checked it out yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking through, and so thank you all for you know, being so attentive and paying attention and excited about this. So this is good to see. So number one, I saw there was a question about, so what exactly is a zero emission delivery zone? And forgive me if I didn't make it clear. It's a partnership between city, technology providers, goods delivery organizations, and community-based organizations like yourselves to, you know, establish an area to test zero emission delivery mechanisms. And the three major functions that I highlighted were the EV prioritized loading zones, where the cameras are staring at those spaces to provide awareness of, you know, is there an incentive for delivery truck drivers to park in an EV prioritized loading zone? Would that be enough to convince them to adopt EVs? And a whole host of other questions, but that, I would say, that's at the top. Second is robot delivery vehicles, remotely piloted. I think robotic is a misnomer. There's a human behind every one of those Cocoa bots driving it, piloting it. So they're remotely piloted, and whether those are, you know, a significant source of greenhouse gas reductions, you know, replacing the delivery driver with a, you know, essentially a remotely piloted greenhouse gas or zero emission vehicle. And then the third leg is the micro delivery, and or also could be referred to as last mile delivery, which Urb-e is championing right now for the zero emission delivery zone. So those are the three major efforts underway within the ZEDs. And hopefully that was clear enough. One thing I said, and I just want to emphasize, is that the ZEDs is not, there's, other than the requirement for remotely piloted food delivery, there is no restrictions on, you know, having to operate an EV to drive within the ZEDs. It's a completely voluntary based. There is no, you cannot drive in here if you're a UPS or an Amazon or a FedEx with a non-EV. The idea was to incentivize and encourage, not to restrict or prevent. So that is, I just wanted to foot stomp that. And I see, let's see, I'm skipping along. So a question was, can consumers ask to have something delivered by zero emission? So that's a great question. And one of the partners in the LACI ZEDs is Shopify. And I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with Shopify, but essentially it's the, I don't want to say anti-Amazon, but it's the competitor to Amazon, where instead of having, you know, a large singular organization provide all your goods, it's a collection of independent retailers, and Shopify is the engine behind the scenes that enables independent sellers and retailers to get their goods out into the market, you know, whether that's through a website, you know, all the different aspects of starting your own business. They're there to facilitate that. And we've been in contact with them about, would you be interested in talking to all your Santa Monica based companies if we could, you know, encourage them to either partner with an Urb-e or with Axle Hire Circuit for all their goods to be delivered, you know, emission free. Would your clients be interested in paying more, or would you be interested to know how much it costs? Does it cost less to do zero emission delivery? Akin to what, if you're familiar, when Google started putting their CO2 emissions for flights. Whenever you pick a flight on Google Flights, now it'll show you the, you know, the comparison of how much that flight versus another flight is in greenhouse gases, in CO2. So that's another effort underway. Let's see. And Royce, if you see a question you want to respond to, feel free.
Yeah, just keep going down the list if you want to, Mike.
Yes, sir. So where is the Santa Monica Depot? I'm presuming that's for Urb-e you're asking, Catherine King. Okay.
Okay, so we actually just moved into a new depot as of yesterday, which was a huge win. We were originally operating out of a mini storage facility. So we actually rented two 10 by 10 square foot or 10 by 10 foot storage boxes where we stored all our equipment. And then every morning we would go in, unlock them, and then put everything out in the driveway, trying not to block anybody else. But we definitely needed, more space to grow. So we just moved to a facility. It's 2,500 square feet on Colorado Avenue and 10th. So we moved about 4 blocks closer to the Zeds and a lot bigger space. So I think we were pretty much maxed out at about 150 packages at the old facility. With this new facility, I'm aiming to hit, which is a very rough estimate, but at least 700 packages a day out of that facility.
Is there any chance, oh, sorry.
ahead.
That, and this is really out of this bailiwick in a way, but of at some point getting legislation to require Amazon and UPS and all those people to use EV trucks?
I'll take a swing at this one, but I would say I think California state is already mandated that what is it, 2035, no longer selling internal combustion engine vehicles. I don't know if there's one targeting directly to goods delivery companies. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not aware of anything specifying that, but I know that, all roads are leading towards EVs right now, right? I mean, this pilot was trying to get after what are the, low-hanging fruit, as Steven said in his quote, what are the things that we could, identify as easy wins and possibly, create buzz or interest or excitement for those companies to make the shift earlier, because it's going to happen no matter what. We're just trying to figure out what are the methods to accelerate it. Right.
Thank you.
Sure. On that note, if I could just share my screen real quick here, something I saw yesterday right out in front of my house. It's Amazon electric delivery, a big box van.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and it's operating out of their depot in Hawthorne. And the driver told me they have 4 of these. They can do over 100 miles, but his typical day is about 50 miles. And he likes it. It's totally quiet, and I like that about it too. Couldn't hear it at all. But yep, it's coming.
Wow.
So
Wow. Thank you. Cool.
yeah, let me see. How do I get out of this? Stop switching. So handing it back to you, Mike.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would say Amazon is definitely putting in the work to create the infrastructure for that. The divide still exists. I mean, I didn't include it in that quote, but an EV is essentially double what you would pay for the same vehicle internal combustion engine. There's a large upfront fee to investing in an EV vice internal combustion engine. And so that's something else that delivery providers are trying to figure out, and how do they, sustain profits if they're making this large investment up front, and the simple math is, well, you're not paying for gas. True, but there's still, other factors at play, as I said, like the running out of gross vehicle weight before you run out of, volume within inside the vehicle. So there's lots of trade-offs. And I'm not sure if you saw it, Kent, but I've got 5 more minutes before I have to jump for another event.
Oh, I didn't see that. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw this question about Urb-e picking up organic materials and delivering them to a community compost site. That's an idea that we had considered early on. I don't know how you would make it profitable. I guess that would be the real question, is like, what's in it? I mean, beyond, let's just be honest, money moves the world. So if you can't make money or somehow profitable for these organizations or businesses to do, then it's probably not going to get very far. So yeah, it was an idea that we floated early on, and nobody had a real good explanation on how to make it profitable or incentivize it economically. But it's definitely something we should continue to chew on and figure out, how do we make that value added. Or you could make the compost delivered to you. Yeah, if there's a way to create a business model, I think that's the beauty of the Zeds, is bringing people together to create that inclusive green economy. Like an idea is only as good as the power behind it to make it happen. So, but I'm open to suggestions of that nature, and that's something we could present to the city council, or not to the city council, but to our city partners. And there's a few in this meeting. So yeah, absolutely.
Great. Just keep blasting through as many of those questions as you can before you have to leave, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. Royce, is that something? So I heard you say that you guys are you made the transition to that new location. And I did want to mention this real quick. Quick shameless plug for Urb-e and LACI working together further is, Urb-e is blazing the way for not just hiring people, but creating a new career path. And I mean, some people may scoff delivery driver as a career path, but in the zero emission green economy, that's a real job that we really need people to fill. And Urb-e's got the bones of a training program, and it needs to be, in addition to just, hiring, young people that want to make a difference, there needs to be some sort of credential. There needs to be some sort of recognition of their training and some sort of way to say, hey, this guy knows how to do this thing. It's not he just knows how to jump on a bike and pedal, but he knows how to operate in traffic without causing accidents. He knows how to deliver and, be mindful of all the traffic violation, conditions and concerns. There needs to be, we need to raise delivery driver out of this is just a job that college kids do in the meantime before they, go on to their professional career. I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, Royce, but LACI and Urb-e are partnering together to create a workforce development pipeline and create real structure and a deliverable at the end. When you finish the training, you can get hired at a variety of these different organizations. I mean, Urb-e would be the lead, of course, but then other organizations as they come on board would be like, oh, I want an Urb-e trained guy to do my deliveries because he already knows the process and he's familiar, and I'm getting a solid product. I'm not just getting some kid off the street.
Yeah, definitely to add on to that, we do have, it's not a super formal training program, but we do put all of our rider candidates through it's about a 5 to 6 hour course. There's some classroom kind of structure to it, and then there's a practical portion that every rider candidate needs to pass before we actually allow them, before we actually hire them and have them start their trial delivery week, and then they do it full time. So the practical goes through all kinds of things, proper like bike etiquette, how to maneuver in the streets without causing traffic, how to be cognizant of the wheelbase of the trailers. We also wet the ground, so they go through like skidding and different environmental challenges that they might face out on the road at any given time.
I assume it also includes social skills and how to interact with customers and.
That I think that's not part of the training, but we probably screen for that during the phone screenings because they do still go through a interview process. Yeah.
But more fodder for the official workforce development course. So definitely something to keep in mind. Kent, Lauren, I have to run, but thank you everyone for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it and sincerely looking forward to seeing more from you guys and absolutely excited to see where the Zeds goes from here. One thing I didn't touch on, once the Zeds ends at the end of this year, LACI has already pivoted the work from the Zeds into a larger Department of Energy Vehicle Technology Office pilot that's going to involve Santa Monica, City of LA, and Pittsburgh, City of Pittsburgh, to focus on. So one of the challenges of the Zeds, and I'll be brief, was that, as I said, you can't change regulations, enforcement. You know, cities aren't designed to pivot that quickly on things like that, and nobody wants to put up a temporary fine or fee or restriction to the citizens and then pull it 6 months to a year later and say, oh, this was just a pilot. You know, nobody wants to do that. So what we've done is we've partnered with universities, Carnegie Mellon being one of them, Pacific Northwest, and then a handful of other think tanks, to gather the data we've gotten from the Zeds this so far, and then instituting more of those cameras in those other cities I named, and be able to model human behavior so we can change things virtually and see what the likely outcomes are, as opposed to having to run things through councils at each city to say, we'll change this. And, you know, like it gives us a way to model human behavior, if you understand what I'm saying. So, which is, of course, one of the most difficult things to do. And it will be inherent with challenges, but that's one of the lessons learned from the Zeds that's going into the next pilot that's already kicked off January of this year. And it's a 3-year study. So yeah, so the Zeds is not going to be one and done. It's already transitioning to its next iteration and evolution.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. And this is definitely a rich, multi-layered project and topic area. So we'll be watching how it evolves, and so glad that Santa Monica was chosen to be involved.
Absolutely.
So thank you again. And, you know, there are a bunch of questions and a lot of interest still. Laureen, do you think we could leave it open for just general conversation at this point? If folks want to respond to any of the questions that are there, we may have some knowledge amongst us, and especially with Royce still on the line. I don't know if you can hang out a while, Royce.
I think we should stay on. I mean, I can, and it'd be great to have more discussion. I put a gazillion questions in the chat because I think it's such a great opportunity, and I just want to know a lot about it. So, I think we have a bunch of people on here who have a lot of interests. So yeah, let's keep talking and figure out how a community group like Chasm can support this change in the way we do business, you know.
Looks like Chris has a question or comment. Go ahead.
I've allowed everyone to unmute themselves now. We know all the people here pretty much. Hopefully we're not going to get Zoom bombed. So if we do, I'll mute you all really quickly, but.
Go ahead, Chris.
This is great. Actually, so great that that my late registration was well warranted. So I mean, well benefited. I'm wondering if SAMO can. I mean, this is such a really good example of where community partners are going to be really important. So, you know, our SAMO-CAN has moved forward in many of our discussions, but we haven't been able yet, even with our efforts, to put ourselves all to work on one thing. So I'm wondering if we consider the possibility, we're not making any decisions, of course, in the near future, but seeing where this goes, keep an eye out of what's something that we can really put ourselves together, work on with the ZED. I mean, I mentioned a couple of ideas in the chat, but anything that could pull us together to really see positive normative change in behavior, et cetera, et cetera.
Good. Yeah, I think we're going to stay involved and we'll look for those opportunities. Laureen, was that a hand?
Well, you know, Chris, you suggested a very interesting project, and Amy and I just participated in something at SMC where we picked up bags of mulch. But you know, if people ask their gardener to go bring them whatever wood chips, mulch, that comes from a million miles away. You know, the carbon cost of that is huge. If you want go to chip drop, which is you get too much, right? I would love to have an Urb-e sized container or something like that. Just bring a load of compost, or even though we compost here at home, or chips over to my house from a local community garden. Or, I think there's that could be kind of interesting and fun, or just have it, yeah. Anyway,
Well,
I like your idea is what I'm
my
saying.
thinking,
It's a
yeah,
nice goal for something.
I love that. My thinking started because not only the Urb-e, I got excited seeing Urb-e, never knew anything about it. So I'm really happy about it. But we've been trying to think about a systemic way for whether it's, local residents, businesses, et cetera, to be able to also have their organic matter handled in a different way. And I don't have the answer yet, but I think your idea, Lorene, is a wonderful one on one end, and on the delivery end and the pickup end needs something. I mean, there's just so many possibilities, even if it's a teeny, even if it's one Urb-e that we experiment with and we see where it might lead. I'm really excited about the potential of us figuring out how we help the city become a leader in demonstrating a closed loop of our materials and zero emissions. Enough said, you get my gist.
Yeah, let's let Royce respond to that.
Yeah, kind of like what Mike was saying. It's I think, like I was mentioning, we have two business verticals, right? One of them as acting as the delivery service provider. So, for instance, right now, Axel hires us to deliver their packages to the last mile.
Could you explain Axel Hire? I don't think everybody here knows what their function is kind of a broker or something.
Yeah. Okay. So Axel Hire is I would say they're kind of like a middleman warehousing sortation center. Essentially, a lot of e-commerce companies, which mainly currently most of their retailers are food meal prep kits. So like I think Martha Stewart has like a meal prep kit, and there's like HelloFresh and a bunch of different ones. So essentially, these e-commerce companies, they don't have any real estate or warehousing or any kind of sortation process or operation, and so they hire Axel Hire to do all of that process. Axel Hire will pick up all of their, or I think all of their products will be delivered to a Axel Hire warehouse, which in LA or in Southern California, it's in La Palma. And then from there, it gets Axel Hire does all of the operations for sortation, sorts it into different routes. They palletize everything, and then most of their last mile delivery was done by 1099 contracted like van drivers, kind of like what Amazon does with Prime Now. They use Amazon Flex drivers to pick up all their packages and then deliver it to consumers' doors. So we work with them. We get all the packages that are for our area in Santa Monica and in Long Beach, and then we will sort them into routes into the containers, and then we'll make the deliveries from there. Yeah, so that's one vertical of our business, which is acting as the actual delivery service provider and delivering for the last mile. The other vertical, which I mentioned earlier, is leasing out our equipment. So if for this compost idea, if there was somebody that was willing to lease our equipment to do all of these things, that would be one possibility. I don't foresee us getting into the actual delivery side of it, because I don't think it would work from our delivery business model. But if we can get and partner with somebody to pick up our equipments in the morning, and then they can do all of their routing on their own. They can swing by, pick up compost, deliver compost where it needs to go and all that, and then return our equipment at the end of the day. We would do all the maintenance and everything, and then rinse and repeat for the next day. That could work. I could definitely see that as a very strong partnership in Santa Monica.
So kind of on those notes, if I could chime in on this, it's like Santa Monica spoke, was proudly part of the initial team that did the support letter to create the pilot. So we've been there since the beginning, and it's really heartening to see that a lot of the things that we worked on, that we questioned at the beginning and gave input at the beginning, have actually come to fruition. So I think that's important to note, that this was really not only the civic partners, but this was community partner driven, and it really helped shape the project. And one of the things that that I was pushing at the beginning was the education of the drivers, which I'm glad to see I did not know that Urb-e was doing. So we had hoped to do something like that as part of the pilot, so that this could be across all of the partners. But if you're doing it, that's also great, and we would love to know more about that. But also with the civic partnership, with the composting, I think potentially that's a good opportunity for us as community partners to push the city to perhaps create something like Chris with the community gardens, where possibly we have the community gardeners program could have one of the boxes that they actually, obviously it's going to get a lot of dirt in it if it's compost, and you're not going to use that for other deliveries. If they had one design for that, and that they use then they lease the remainder of the equipment to do deliveries around, either to the community gardeners or in the scheme that I've been proposing for many years, where we drop off and pick up composting at the farmers markets, so that community members have a centralized place to drop those off, and then they'd actually have to get to the yards. So if we create the battle cry to push the city to maybe create some sort of civic partnership that can support having a vehicle or a fleet of vehicles that did that, then it becomes the correct model for Urb-e, where they're actually, as they have every right to do, make money doing with their vehicles, but also with the civic partnership that's helping pay for that. That's really a community benefit.
Do the farmers markets generate a lot of organic waste?
They do, and they already have some sort of pickup, because they pick up what all the farmers leave behind. So that's all picked up afterwards, and that goes to organic waste. So yeah, I've been, since back in Laura Avery days, I've been trying to get the farmers markets to provide community bins, so that the community could come down there and leave their waste, and then it could leave the farmers market at the same time all of the farmers waste leaves and go to the composting center. The farmers markets in New York have been doing that for decades. That's where I initially saw it in working. I was down at one of the farmers markets, and I've noticed all these like stackable bins. And as we came back a little bit later, the bins were like twice or three times as high. Every time they fill them, they flip down the lid and stack another empty one on top. And everybody from all over the place in Brooklyn is walking down there with their little buckets to put them into the bins. So it works. All we have to do is do it, and that's way more smaller units, shall we say, than we have here. And they were open to doing that.
Let's see.
I'm going to jump off, but thank you. I just noticed that I looked at the Axelrod website. It didn't say anything about warehouses, just the delivery services. So you said they actually have warehouses to do the sorting and management?
Yes. Yeah, all across the country. They have
Okay, it's
warehouses.
funny. I didn't see, well, I guess I didn't see it. Anyway, Okay, goodbye. Last silly question. Our newspaper, the plastic covers the LA Times, is that recyclable? It says it